So we have a question about the fundamental triangle for the points x1, y1, and x2, y2. So we draw a fundamental triangle and label the points x1, y1, x2, y2. Okay? Now, we complete labeling. What's the first thing you label when you have the 2 points?
The run.
Okay, could be the rise or the run, but those two are going to be done in either order. They're independent, so they could be done in either order, but you can't do anything else until you have the rise and the run. So the run is x2 minus x1, isn't it? And the rise is y2 minus y1. Now we're going to go in this direction so we know which one to subtract from which. Okay? So we generally go from 1 to 2. Okay? So now what?
So you would label the slope, which is
Okay.
x2 minus x1.
Yeah, the slope is rise divided by run.
Yeah, y2 minus y1.
So I don't have to write that out, although it's not a bad idea to write it out. But we just have a couple of minutes. And that just says y2 minus y1 divided by x2 minus x1, right? Okay, and it's got a box around it, and it's where it's supposed to be, so we know it's a slope. So we don't even have to write the word slope, because we're using the labeling that we need to use to kind of help us lock this whole thing in and make it easy to communicate. Okay? Right? Get used to that, because I'm going to be requiring it. And then we also can find the hypotenuse, right? Well, it's the square root of the square of the run plus the square of the rise. That's just Pythagorean theorem. And we're used to that because I haven't been seeing slopes every time I want to see them, but I usually see the hypotenuse. Okay? So y'all are doing that as a group, and some of you might not be, but it's not that you couldn't do the slope, you're just forgetting to do it because you're hung up on doing the hypotenuse. Okay, well, that's going to be then x2 minus x1 squared plus y2 minus y1 squared, right?
Square root.
So I'm going to write that here. I'm kind of double labeling the hypotenuse. It's got a length, and its slope is the slope that we're looking for. Anyhow. Okay? And then the midpoint that we haven't talked a lot about since the very beginning, so you might want to review why. Midpoint's halfway between. If you add two numbers and divide by 2, you get the number that's halfway between them. And same thing for y. y1 plus y2 over 2 is halfway between y1 and y2. So the midpoint is this.
Yeah.
Okay?
It don't work. Sorry.
And we can label that point. It's halfway between, I'll use a different color because things are getting a little bit messy up here. But this point is halfway between, and this point is x1 plus x2 over 2, y1 plus y2 over 2, and that's the midpoint. And you want to get out of the habit of doing x1 minus x2 or something like that here, as people were kind of in the earliest part of the course, okay? less than a month ago. But make sure you understand the reason it's this and this is because the midpoint is halfway between x1, y1 and x2, y2. So the x-coordinate has to be halfway between x1 and x2, and you don't get halfway between x1 and x2 by subtracting. You get it by adding and dividing by 2. Okay? That makes sense?
Yes.
And y1, y2. You know, again, you don't get that by subtracting, you get it by adding y1 and y2, dividing by 2. Now there are operations that involve subtraction that could be used, but they'd be more complicated. This is much more direct and simple. Okay? Okay, very good. If I see anything else on these papers that we need to talk about, I will put it in the video by this evening. Okay?